to deal with something that I was working with someone the other day. Basically what the question was, how do I know what matters? And really, what a good question. What matters? And from the brain and mind point of view, how do we know what matters? How do we know what's important? How do we know what's relevant? How do we know what we need to know is worth knowing? All these questions, and so many people come with this aspect of concern. Now, when I start to talk with somebody in a therapeutic session, I'll say, perhaps you can fill me in. Tell me a few bits and pieces about what's going on. And they'll say, oh, where do I start? And I say, well, doesn't matter, wherever you want. And by saying that, by leaving that open-ended invitation, I actually invite their system to create the hierarchy. And what's interesting is kind of what matters is what they start to talk about. Now, maybe they start directly hitting the pin, well, this is what's really getting at me. Or they start to talk around it. And you can tell the difference between someone who says, well, this is what it is. Or they're saying, well, I got up this morning and then I was sort of doing this. And they start to talk about what they notice, about what appears to them, what comes to mind, what comes into their brain. And this is where it starts to get interesting. Because the conscious brain, and our mind, how we regulate this flow of energy information. But the brain engages with those things that matter. And those things that matter are those things that are directly connected to or directly a result of something of emotional importance. Those are the things that matter. Now, what do we mean by emotionally relevant? I mean, it's difficult because I was talking before about right and left hemisphere, and what people sometimes erroneously think is that the right hemisphere is the emotional stuff and the left hemisphere doesn't have the emotional stuff. That just has all the detail stuff. And that's not true. Right hemisphere is concept and broad thinking, whereas left hemisphere is specific and detailed thinking. But they both rise and exist in our consciousness due to a fact of certain demand. We have enough demand, and that demand is emotional. It needs to matter. Now, in a negative side of things, or in the therapeutic side of things, these sorts of emotions come up because of negative inner voices and of feelings that are of low self-esteem or of history in their trauma or negative attachment issues and insecure attachments and so on and so forth. Otherwise, it can be just due to physical needs. Certainly we start thinking around the process of food 2 or 3 times a day because there's a demand, there's an emotional demand to be hungry. Eating is terribly important because that's how you survive, so it's a survival, so it's very, very strong in its emotional sense. A lot of our emotional drives are this sense of survival. And the important thing to remember in the survival sense is the two sides of it. Now, certainly there's mortal danger, the saber-toothed tiger jumping out from behind a rock, the actual physical danger where you are going to be physically injured. But the other one, which we keep needing to be reminded of as being terribly important, is social disengagement, is social rejection. And we found through various experiments, certainly Lieberman has done quite a few, and his colleagues, looking at the way pain is experienced in the same part of the brain, the anterior cingulate, whether you're having physical pain or whether you're fearing social disengagement or social rejection. And so it's really important that these social rejection issues also tend to bring up and create and push things into mind. They matter. Now also we have the other heightened emotions, great pleasure, things that are very funny, love, those people that we have great passion for and connection for. So there's a number of things that come to mind. And interestingly, when you're working with yourself, but certainly when you're looking or listening to your partner or your friends or your family, or if you're a therapist, listening to your client, those things that come up, those things that come into mind matter in the way that they are telling you. They're giving you information about what is important to them at that time. If they're in a lovely situation, but they're talking about something upsetting or disturbing, or being upset and being suddenly cranky when you're doing something really nice, wow, what have we triggered? What is it that matters, that this particular event is bringing to their conscious attention about something else that matters? It could be something from the past. Sometimes it can be something from right now. You could be being terribly, terribly nice to your partner or your children or a workmate, and they snap at you. And then what you might find out is they've got indigestion, or they've got a headache, or they've got a pain in their arm. And because they're suppressing this, as we do in life, soldier on, battle on, don't have anything wrong with you, and by suppressing these physical difficulties, it then emerges and gets projected onto something else. So when someone doesn't make sense, when their reaction doesn't seem to be sensible, don't go, oh, what's wrong with them? They're being really stupid. Oh, they should have done this and they should have done that. Go, wow, that doesn't make sense to the normal, what I was expecting, the flow of things. I wonder what it is that is bothering them that's different than what this is. Or I wonder what it is about what the thing that is happening now is triggering in their mind. Perhaps this is something that upset them once before. Now I know even in my relationship, and I don't know whether you know, I'm in a second marriage in life, and it's wonderful, my gorgeous Susie, but in the early parts of our marriage we were very thoughtful. I mean, we're older now, so a little bit more experienced, but we were very thoughtful to say, hello, you're not talking to your ex-partner, talking to me. And it was fascinating how often that was right. That we get stuck in these rigid programs, and one or other of us was doing something that looked a bit like the past experiences which we weren't enjoying, and then we brought that feeling into the present. It's kind of like a PTSD, a sort of a minor momentary PTSD, where suddenly the past stays as a traumatic event and expresses itself in the present. So, what matters is what comes up because it's emotionally relevant and has something to do with strong feelings and senses in our life. What really matters is for us to pay attention, for us to notice, and for us to look both at what we're doing and make sure that we're congruent, we're in sync with what's going on around us, as we do with our partners, our friends, our clients, our family. Wow, what is it that might be going on that I don't understand, simply because what's mattering to them doesn't so much matter to me? If we make it matter, then everybody begins to connect and collect, and suddenly we understand.